Jason Neri. I'm the founder of Northern Courage, which is a kind of business with two wings. I mean, originally it started um, to be the LLC that housed my whiskey brand, which is called Accord Stone Irish Whiskey. Of course, I've got a bottle near me at all times. We launched that in July of this year was kind of when we first had our sales to a distributor. Started getting some e-commerce sales in May, and that's been a really fun project. Working on it for like 2.5 years. In addition to that, Northern Courage also does consulting and really specified with the kind of greater beverage alcohol space. My greater, I mean, anything that's kind of going to go near those same shelves and be in those same sorts of accounts. Certainly have clients that span non-alcoholics. I've had clients that span hemp beverages. And essentially it's something that I can, do to help other founders grow, but also pay the bills while I'm growing my whiskey brand because we're self-funding that thing. And I don't have it in the P&L to take a salary for about 3 years. And I got to keep the lights on.
Absolutely. I feel for you, man. I've done that and continue to do that. You got to balance both things in order to get the other thing off the ground. So it's the darker side of entrepreneurship that people don't talk about is, you might be known for one thing, but there's a lot of other things taking your time and attention behind the scenes.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. Behind the scenes too, we also have 4 children, my wife and I, ages 6, 3, and 8 months.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there's very little sleep around here. There's a lot of running around. It's such an exciting time in my life. I think most people would say I was nuts to, go out on my own while I have all that around me, but I have a very, very supportive wife who is a partner as well in the whiskey end of the business. She has a great marketing background. She brings an incredible lens to what we're doing with that and helps keep my kind of off the wall tangents and ADHD brain focus on the task at hand. So, all the things behind the scenes, right?
It's absolutely. Yeah. My girlfriend and I are a blended family with 4 for 11 to 20. So, so it's and I would say exactly the same thing. Having a strong support system in your corner is the number one way to persevere in entrepreneurship.
No doubt.
Every time I failed was when I tried to do everything on my own and I didn't have any support. That was when I fell back and slid back.
Yeah, I mean, it's the classic adage of you can go fast alone, you can go far together, right?
You're exactly right. So talk to me about so go back before the consulting and before the whiskey brand. What are you doing prior to that? And kind of let me give you a year. Let's go to you're 20 years old. What are you doing? And where are you?
Well, 20 years old, I was probably at Harpo's Bar and Grill on 4th of July nights in Columbia, Missouri, which is where I went to college. And then on the nights I was working, I was at Le Bourgeois Winery, which is a local family-owned winery in Columbia, Missouri. It was kind of my first foray into the business. It was really on the hospitality end. I worked in the restaurants. I worked in the tasting bar. And that came about my roommate and I, this guy who's actually still also in the wine and spirits business, but in a totally different tangent that I stayed on. He went to the farm first. He stayed on the farm. I went to hospitality and I stayed kind of in that consumer facing, front of the house sort of role. But he and I lived together, and one the head winemaker moved in above us. He was kind of going through like a messy divorce or whatnot, and we were sitting outside in the backyard having a couple of beers by a stick burner one night, and we were eating ramen. He's like, "You guys are like dead broke." I was like, "Do you guys want to work?" Like, absolutely. It's like, listen, come to the winery tomorrow, and we need some more hands on deck going into their harvest, going into their busy season. So let's see how we can put you guys to work. So my roommate Tim went to work in the vineyards, and I spent the day in the cellar, which is underneath the highway, capping, bottling their sparkling wine. And it was like 4 a.m. I got there, and it was dark and it was cold and kind of sucked. And I was like, "Can I do anything else?" He's like, "Yeah, the catering and event staff always need more people. We always need some more people in the tasting room. Why don't you do that?" And I fell in love with kind of just telling the story of what's in your glass, talking people through what they're tasting, helping them find what they like within whatever we have to offer. And Yeah, that's what I was doing in my 20s. That's my first foray into the business, and so at this point, I'm almost 20 years in.
That's awesome. So I started when I was 19 and I'm 21 years in. So we're right there on and tracking the same way as I assume. So the other thing we parallel with is when you talked about before with doing the story and talking through what's in your glass. I was exactly what you're talking about, but on the craft beer side. So I was the one running these things called beer schools where we would work with restaurants and then do beer pairing dinners and all kinds of educational programs around our market. So it's really cool to also. I want to ask you because I don't get to ask this often how what people realize of being that age and working in this industry.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Oh yeah, being that age, like at that age in 20, 21, 22, and then working in this industry, like how do you think that affected the trajectory of your life after that?
I think it helped because it gave me a foundation at least of, kind of what people are expecting in a hospitality setting and kind of different ways to talk about it. I mean, listen, it was a big learning curve though, going from that environment where um, a lot of people come in are college students, they're on dates. A lot of the wines we have are super sweet, sugared up, which is, what they were looking for. And a lot of things I would do was like be at like fraternity parties, and I would maybe drive around a hayride in a tractor, or be just pouring them huge glasses, like no more in the cup of Riverboat Red is what we had, and Riverboat White and Pink Fox. And then going into like a more professional setting was a lot different. That was so fast and loose there. My next job in the industry was working for Works Beverage, which is now Breakthrough Beverage in Chicago. And that is a long running, legacy business. It's run by Rocky Wirtz, who transformed like three family businesses. Very fortunate he signed like my first professional paychecks. Definitely someone I admire a lot. But then going into having those conversations differently with, people who are, you're trying to, not sell a college kid a drink at a bar. You're trying to sell someone a case of wine or a case of spirits to the liquor store that they own, and you're asking them to, you know, hand over their own money in hopes of making some money on this product that you say is really.
So then at 19, that's how I started, was it that in the on premise, but then it was a Wrigley Beverage in Philadelphia, and then I ended up running the craft division for Ace Distributing over in York. So there we go again. We're tracking in the distribution world too.
No, absolutely, yeah. It's a fun industry. It's an industry where you can touch them all and kind of figure out where you are really the most comfortable and where your skill sets are super best. Um, and I think it also changes kind of throughout a life. I meet so many people now that have been on the hospitality side for 20 years, but maybe some of them have kids or young families, and they're looking to transition into roles either with a supplier or the distributor because that there's no longer hours than working in a restaurant or a bar, and they're odd hours, right? So if you have kids in school, it's like, well, your place of business may not open until 11 a.m., may not open until 4 p.m. Um, they're kind of looking to get something that's going to help them spend more time with their families. And there's always that transition too.
And that's the one of the most challenging parts about the industry, I think, is it depends on what age you come into and what stage you are in life. It's a completely different experience.
Yes.
And it's even for mine, it's kind of funny because like even now the industry is a little different. Like my kids grew up sitting on the pallets of beer while I was working in the office. So I got tons of photos of them on pallets of Miller Lite and all kinds of stuff. And like that's that was the way they grew up, and they grew up in breweries, running around with the breweries working and stuff like that. So their interpretation of the world and alcohol is a little bit different. But at the same time, it's also interesting to talk to somebody like yourself that's been in it so long, because let's talk a little bit about, you said about, fast and loose and stuff like that. Let's go back 15, 20 years in our industry versus now how we're operating.
Yeah. I mean, it's a much different ballgame. Um, The professionalism is, I don't want to say it's required more,
Mhm.
but people just don't get away with kind of bad behavior as much anymore. And it's all for the best.
Yep.
Gosh, I remember going on my first few incentive trips, and we go out to like wine country, and it's like I see my bosses just getting sloshed absolutely like in a hot tub, and it's kind of, I was like, man, you're my boss, and there's men and women, and we're all in this hot tub together. It's like midnight. I was like, this doesn't seem very professional or right. seeing my boss's boss get carried out of a casino in Las
Yeah.
Vegas, kind of nutty. And I don't really think that happens anymore. And I think it's glad that it doesn't, especially for younger people going into the business. Like, man, that's a way to turn someone off pretty quick. And as an owner of a brand now, I don't want anyone representing my brand and my name um, and behaving like that, right?
No, and I'm glad you brought it up because it's something I do talk about in here. I'm 3 years sober, and one of it was that reason. Like I went through different professional stages, but then I also went in and leaned in hard on the party side of the business and made a life out of throwing parties, and things got out of hand. And I don't blame anything of the industry, but we can all know, like, if you're in it with a problem and then all that's going on, then there's no guardrails. It's easy to kind of slide off the rails every once in a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've also been there myself. I mean, not going to sugarcoat or lie. Like,
Yeah.
it's tough to kind of keep your head on it. I did think that I and it is different because I've worked in wine, beer, and spirits. I've worked for a large wholesaler. I've worked for large suppliers. I've worked for smaller suppliers, and I found that the consistency of consumption was higher in craft beer than it was in spirits or wine. I might have just been my personal experience, might have been even my stage of life.
No, it's the same as mine. It's the same as mine. Yeah, and we know that because I mean, for mine, I was working on commission, and I was watching my rate of sale. It was always that. You're right.
Yeah, yeah.
It's yeah, it's one of those things that a lot of times I look at the different industries and stuff like that, and it's interesting. We have everything from NA as well as functional beverages and stuff. So it's always fun to watch the data and the turn rates and how they change on each category, and then within alcohol, the same, like you said. Yeah, nobody's sitting around drinking sippy cups anymore of wine. So, like,
No, no, not so much. Uh,
what do you think? Like, kind of, since you've been in it for a long time as well, like, what are your kind of suggestions as far as if somebody is kind of graduating high school or even in their 20s and stuff like that? And let's say, to be honest, let's say they saw the Bear on Fox or FX and they want to get into the hospitality industry. What do you think are some good benchmarks for people to say, hey, if you got these skill sets and stuff like that, then the rest will kind of fall into place or anything like that?
you got to be comfortable with chaos. And you have to be able to spin 10 plates at once, probably figuratively and literally. And you need to have a really good coping mechanism that doesn't involve substances and substance abuse. It's that's what I recommend because it is hectic. And the Bear, I think, has been influential and great, and a lot of ways has been great for the city that I love, Chicago, because it puts so many great, independent makers on the map. It's highlighting some things that are beautiful and great about the city. It also highlights about how much that industry could break you down. I will say though, when you're in your 20s, um, you should be able, your risk tolerance should naturally be higher because your responsibilities are just fewer. Um, Certainly there's exceptions to that. There's people in their 20s who also have to take care of their parents or take care of their siblings, financially, health wise, everything. But it's in your 20s, you're going to have kind of your lowest earning potential because you have the least amount of knowledge. Um, and especially if you went to, a university, I would suggest getting into it even before going into a university and maybe putting that on pause. Seen so many people take on mountains of debt and have a middle management job to show for it, and still in mountains of debt, and those jobs are being replaced by AI very quickly. Um, but yeah, I mean, throw yourself into it. It's a decade where you should find yourself, find out what you truly love, and take those risks. I wish I had taken more risks in my 20s. Instead, I was able to build a great foundation. Um, and I built up a skill set to where I consider myself a Swiss Army knife. And I'm not the best at cutting, with the best pair of scissors, best little magnifying glass, but I can do all of those things to a pretty decent degree of capability. So I'm able to throw myself into a wide variety of situations. That's a lot of my consulting to really be pretty effective because I can look at a lot of different aspects of someone's business and give them sound advice based on experience. It's also helped me, start my own brand from a concept to bottles on the shelf at one of the most competitive retailers in the Midwest, which is Binny's, uh, within a short amount of time. And that was without having to hire any consultants to tell me how to get it done. I just, was able to figure out.
So let's talk a little bit about that. Like you have your own brand now, and let's talk a little bit about the other piece that people don't realize is our industry is very hand-to-hand sales, and especially when it comes to craft liquor and craft wine and craft beer. So let's talk about the challenges of that and how, if you're a brand, let's say, that's getting ready to open up a new market or things like that, some advice as far as understanding from a capital intensive standpoint and also from an ROI standpoint and setting expectations.
Sure. So it is hand-to-hand combat. I mean, big distributor, small distributor, you have to sell the product. You have to be your first salesman. You have to be your best salesman. At some point, you can move yourself to part-time, but I don't think you can ever fully fire yourself from that role. I hope to fire myself from marketing. I hope to fire myself from some of the operational plannings. But the blending. I'd love to fire myself from logistics, but I can't yet. But um, and, it, and the reason I say big distributor, small distributor, it doesn't really matter. All of their books are so overburdened right now, and they most of them have taken on everything they can take on. And there's been such a massive shrink just in the last 5 years in that critical last mile um, that the distributor fulfills in terms of getting your product from your warehouse to the retailer shelves or the restaurant shelves. Whoever said yes, we believe in it, we're going to carry it. Um, and when I was going to seek out my distributor for example, in Illinois, four of the companies that I had worked with before that I really wanted to work with were gone. Pure Wine was gone. Tenzing, had been absorbed into Breakthrough. Some of the folks broke off to a new thing that's kind of different. So Tenzing was no longer there. Momentum Beverage just had kind of closed their doors. So and the consolidation is only speeding up. Now you see even big houses like R&DC. Just this last week got bought by or getting acquired by Reyes in 6 markets. There goes a dedicated wine and spirits distributor into a giant beer house, and they're not going to be picking up craft brands. They're going to be picking up things that already have built-in demand that fill trucks. In most states, there's not self-distribution opportunities. Maybe they're really tough to kind of find. So that's the first thing. I mean, do you know distributors? Do you know someone that's going to be able to bring that last mile? Otherwise, you're going to have to really lean on DTC. And that's complicated too. It depends on how your product is priced. If you have a $20 bottle of wine, no one's going to pay $20 more to ship it. Kind of learned that at a company I was working at before I started my brand. It was, demand was there, but again, no one's going to pay the same amount of product just to get it shipped. So, and in terms of the capital expenditure, first things first is to get your liquid right. That's really the most important thing. And you have to love the customer that you plan on selling it to. I mean that like really you have to love them, you have to care about them. You have to want them to be so happy that they spent their money on your product. People have less money to spend. The economy has not been very easy for so many people. Past it's been going on for a while now. But you know what?
It might be our time since we kind of finished high school shortly after.
Yeah, it was oh boy, that's when I got out of college, and it was tough.
Yeah, I graduated in 08, so yeah, we definitely felt that. Yeah, go to college, you're gonna get a job, all that horse shit they fed us.
Oh man, my first job. So before I got the job as a distributor, and I was kind of waiting to hear back, I did 6 months working at a bank investment bank. I think. Have you seen like the boiler room?
Yeah, I'll say just thought about boiler room.
Oh, dude. So yeah, it was probably 300-400 cold calls a day. You hear no and you in very creative ways. Got me some tough skin, but it was 70+ hours a week, straight commission. So there'd be some weeks I'd make I made like $2,000. There'd be some weeks I'd make $75. And that was really tough. Anyways, digress.
No, it's a
Um,
valid point though. People need to realize that exists still. Like we
yes,
still, I mean, we still have to do that. And in our line of work, nothing's easy. Like you are going to call 10 people and 9 people are going to tell you to go fuck yourself, or they're going to hang up, or they're going to call. I've even had them call the FTC or FCC agency and threaten to file things just because I called to say hi. I wasn't even selling anything. So like, I think people need to realize that, because a lot of times we hire people for telesale, and we have to really be explicit about the reality of what it is. Like sales is one thing, walking in the door, and over the phone, they have no emotion. Like you're just a voice on the phone, and they will say anything to make you feel horrible.
my gosh. Yes. Does your father know what you do for a living? Man, come on. Yes, he's not very proud right now. I'm working on it. I'm young.
That was a
Um,
quick thing in during COVID, when we realized, all of us realized really quickly, we can't sell alcohol.
no, no, not so much. But I mean, man, it's easy to sell things. Then we were buying so much.
That
Um,
yeah, it was less touch points. You're right, more volume, less touch points. Yeah.
But and that's another thing that people should realize if they want to start a brand now. I mean, I started dreaming of this brand, 2.5 years before I launched it, and things looked a lot different. In the middle of 2022, trends were up on so many things. We were just riding that wave, and there's like, man, everyone is drinking a lot, and people are just continuing to stock up, and that's going to go on forever. And then, at the back half of 2023. The other foot started coming down. 2024, it stopped down. 2025, the other foot stomped in the first foot. So, it's here we are. And I think there's some signs that it's a camelback and we're maybe kind of coming up a little bit from it. There's still plenty of brands and companies that are up versus their 2019 numbers. But there's so many people that are in financial dire straits because they produced like that those trends are going to keep going, and distributors thought that they're going to continue going. Stores thought that they're going to continue to keep going. So it's just a lake of unpurchased booze out there that's not in consumers' homes, and that's something to watch for. Obviously, I was in it by the time this came up. It was I wasn't. I just let the whiskey sit in the barrel until it all evaporated, and go out someday with a little bit of 20-year-old whiskey and try to sell a very unknown thing at hundreds of dollars. But it was time to make the leap, and fortunately, we have seen some decent velocity on it. But if you're going in, you can manage um, what your spend is, what your ROI by how much you produce, and what your expectations are. I would advise people to not expect to go national and expand so rapidly very quickly. There's some companies that have been able to do it, but if you look at, I'll give a good example from like the RTD world. Two brands that have like exploded over the last few years that I really admire that did it so differently. One is Carlos, husband and wife team. They started the thing during COVID. They focused just in Wisconsin, and they did what I really think brands should focus
I'm
on.
just gonna tell you that Adam was one of the first 5 guests that I had on this episode 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, really?
That's
Awesome.
so crazy you just brought that up. Yeah, Adam was one of my first 5 guests or so. Yeah.
Well, he followed a really smart playbook, which is like, look, no one's a prophet in their hometown, right? But you have to own where you are first because there are going to be drinkers for that product. Just expand the radius out a little bit. But they focus on Wisconsin, and they focus on winning Wisconsin. Say, okay, we won Wisconsin. They outsell High Noon in Wisconsin. Galloway is the mightiest, beverage company around, and they beat them. And only then would they expand to another market. And they're in the top five, whatever it is in that category, and they're doing an excellent job, but they're doing it slowly and smartly, going deep, getting entrenched in communities, figuring out where exactly their product works by channel, by account type, by maybe demographic of the area even, and using those learnings to replicate the playbook in another market. So that's one story, and that's the one that I think people should follow the most because it's not like they started with a mountain of cash, to go out.
But honestly, like I've actually messaged him and his wife multiple times because I just love what they've been doing since then. And it's funny because I did, being in the business I'm in, every once in a while you check the pulse and be like, hey, when you're ready to come to Pennsylvania, you do the same thing. Hey, when you're coming to my state, let me know. I'll help you lay out your distribution. And every time, exactly what you just said verbatim, almost, it was like, we're doing this like slowly. We're building the home base first. It was like, it was so strategic and meticulous, and I respected it so much.
Oh, naturally. And then, on the other side of things, there's another, independent brand that, so by independent, I mean, not owned by Constellation or Gallo, or whoever. And it's Good Boy Vodka, another RTD brand that's had crazy explosive growth. Um, you know, things are really good, but they spent a lot of cash to get there, in terms of hiring a really big sales team, expanding state by state very quickly. They're doing, speedboat sponsorships, race car sponsorships. They have celebrity partners with John Daly and Travis Pastrana. The Pratt family has a lot of cash to start with, and Pratt Industries is a very, very successful company. It does great things, employs a lot of people. But don't think that you could go out and do that unless you have their sort of cash and you're willing to burn it and you're willing to operate in the red for a while. For us and what we're doing, I want a Cordstone to build more organically. I want to get to profitability as quickly as possible. And that means I am the celebrity face behind the brand, right? And we're going to expand slowly. We had a goal of opening 3 states in our first year, and that's really based on the geography of where I have relationships, where I kind of know where the bodies are buried, so to speak, and where I can drive to and travel to efficiently, stay at some friends' houses, families' houses, whatever. So Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan. We live in South Bend, Indiana right now, so it's kind of a nice, easy start point. 2.5 hours to Indianapolis, about 90 minutes to Chicago, 2 hours to Grand Rapids, about 2.5 to Detroit. So it's like, okay, I can easily get to those areas. Now I put 3,500 miles on my car every month, it's like 7 months, but it's not unmanageable, right?
No, not at all. And actually, we're almost tracking the same with our mileage every month. So you're good. You're good to go there too. The I can the last time I was out in that area, we did annual business planning meetings with we had Lagunitas, New Holland, and Bell's, and another brand up there. I'm losing my name real quick. But yeah, so it's in that area. I know that Midwest corridor very well, and especially up in Michigan and stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. It is dodgy as all hell this time of year to get out and see accounts, especially like, all right, like the other day I was driving to Chicago and we just had this big storm in South Bend, and between our exit and then like the next like kind of big oasis or truck stop, there's 22 vehicles in the ditches. Worth it today to go see these? Yeah, it is. Let's go.
I uh I sometimes when I'm doing those drives, I remind myself of all the different experiences I had while pitching retailers while they were still working and they were operator retailers, like while customers are going in and out. And like a couple weeks ago, I had a situation where the customer went in and clogged up the toilet. And I came home from work and everybody was like, "Oh, how was the job today?" I was like, "Well, I did my first pitch in a bathroom while somebody was on the." So literally, the owner is like plunging the toilet. The thing is going everywhere. It's sewage. And then he's like, "I only have 5 minutes with you before the next guy comes." And I'm like, "All right, we're doing this." So I'm handing them towels while I'm going from memory, and I tell the story and I mean it, like not as a gripe, but actually that's the difference. And I'm going to say this, and some people take it out of context and say it's egotistical, but that's the difference of what we're talking about, the resilience and like the difference of who can handle every situation. Because when you work for a distributor now, sometimes, like you said, they have a lot of brands. So sometimes in a distributor realm, it's order taking, so to speak. It's not a whole lot of time for sales. You go in, what's in the inventory, what's out, what's the high items, hot priorities, etc. But now when you go in as a brand manufacturer, you have to tell a story. You're not just, I need 3, I need 2, I need 4, I need 2 6, I need 4 7s, whatever it is. And that's, I think, what sometimes is two things is, number one, for brands, you just nailed it. It's the be comfortable with the risk that you signed up for.
Mhm.
And I say that sternly and I say that to every client that comes on, is the clear expectation is you're not going to pay for 30 days of sales work and then get 30 days worth of sales work return in the next 45 days. And that's not anything of a reflective of the work that was done in the market. It's the fact that the market is so jammed and packed with so many SKUs and distractions, let's call them. And the retailer themselves has a million distractions, not to mention what's going on culturally today and whatever is, I deal with a lot of different cultures in my line of work, as I'm sure you do as well. And you add in external factors and internal factors. If you can't pitch a story and connect emotionally with that retailer, like you said it in the very beginning, you got to love your retailer, and that has to be reciprocated and felt. And if you can't do that and you're just another order taker, there's not a long longitude in the craft world for you. There's a big future in like order taking. And I think that never existed before. And I think you could get away with a good story and a good quip, but now you have to emotionally be vulnerable and connect.
You do, and you have to go in understanding what they're going through in their day. Like you said, clogged toilets. If it's a restaurant, it's like, okay, well, we didn't get our beef delivered today. We can't make burgers. That's the thing that we do. Or our broiler's broken. Our heater's broke. Our 4 employees called off sick. I'm gonna have to run the whole show by myself. That's the reality of being a restaurant. They're probably up to 1 a.m. closing the joint the night before.
That's
Um,
that's the whole other thing. Yeah.
yeah, so it's you got to go in with that level of empathy, and you got to figure out how you're going to manage them. Is it going to be emotionally? Is it going to be financially? You got to make that connection, and you got to follow through with it. Um, you can't be everywhere at once, so under promise, over deliver. I also like to say you got to pick the accounts that you're just going to really babysit. They're going to be your key accounts. You are going to own the relationship for as long as you own your brand. Go and make it really special for them. Go and make it something like, do you know what? Like, this place just isn't the same if we take that product off the shelf. It becomes a fabric of the place. And that's because you show that you care as much about their business. And that's the only way that they're going to want to give a shit about yours, because there are plenty of other whiskey, RTD, non-alc wines, beverages, on and on down the line it goes.
And it's I would say also you nailed it too with the follow through. I hire companies to survey anonymously my retailers and stuff like that. And the number one thing is follow through, as whether or not they choose if they're going to bring a brand in. And then there's a deeper question that gets asked, and it's why. And the why is because when the shit hits the fan, they want to know they can trust everybody and be able to call them and get what they need. And not because a lot of times we've all seen it. A lot of sales reps and other account managers and things like that, when the conflict begins and the stress begins and it's not a wave anymore, they tend to pull the old meme like Homer backing into the bushes. You know what I mean? Like, not my baby, not my problem. You know what I mean? And that's not the way that we build business partnerships. And I appreciate the way that you present it, because it's the way I've been trying to drill into any sales rep I've trained or coached is you're a consultative sales rep. Like you're not a sales rep. You're a consultant, and your job is to understand when you walk in the door what you need to anticipate what could be going on in their life before you pull that doorknob, because you don't have time when you walk in the door to figure it out. You need to have all the scenarios and all the mind mapping done before you pull that door.
Uh, Absolutely, and you also got to understand too that it's your product is not going to be right for every account, and sometimes we were told in my sales training that Gallo microchipped a long time ago, and look at the 10 steps from the sales call.
Yeah, I don't know if there's an Anheuser-Busch
Yeah,
microchip.
yeah.
That's another one. That's another one I have.
Yeah.
I got a lot. I'm like a NASCAR driver with chips all down. No, it's fine.
And so we were taught a lot in those sales trainings, like, well, no means not right now. It's like, no, I mean, no, a lot of times means no. Sometimes means F no. You don't try to, shove a square peg in a round hole like walk on. There's other places out there your product could fit. Take time to like really survey accounts and be sure that your product can actually be successful and add value to what they have in there. Going back to the risk, the industry has, the story that's going on was towards like 90% failure rate for new brands. Probably higher now because there's so many brands. And understand that risk. Don't bite off more than you could afford to lose financially. You don't want to start with no money. So finding an investor early on, which is harder to do now than it has been in the past, but that could be key. And get the idea of the glamour kind of out of your head, because like you mentioned, like you're going to go and do sales pitches and you might be plunging a toilet while you do it. But it's not all parties in Miami, with fancy cocktails and The Rock is there. I don't even does he do that or um, you know that's not what this business is. It's very much your hands are dirty, doing hard work.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and I try to drill that into people as well. Hey, I want to, as we're closing out, I want to make sure if there's anything else you want to talk about that's going on before we kind of close out here.
Well, I'd love to tell people a little bit more about Cold Stone, what we're trying to do with it. Uh, I got into making this Irish whiskey, which I'm not Irish. Found out I was raised in an Italian house, right? I found out later in life that my mom is like a quarter Irish from the Mitchell side of her family, which you probably should have figured already.
I was just going to call you out on that. Our last name was O'Reilly, but we thought we were from Cyprus. I don't know.
But um, but but I kind of always like kind of growing up around Irish people and Irish culture. I went to Catholic schools in Chicago suburbs. Well, when you do that, everyone you meet is going to be Italian or Irish, Italian, Polish, Mexican. Maybe not necessarily in that order, but that's the mix of people you're going to be around. And I married into a really big Irish Catholic family, and I'm just kind of enamored by a lot of things in the culture. And my brothers-in-law love both kinds of Irish whiskey. They love Jameson and Jameson Black Barrel. And while those are great, I came from drinking bourbon, and I came, as many bourbon drinkers kind of get your palates destroyed by high proof bourbons. My favorite bourbon is Wild Turkey Rare Breed. I think it's like kind of perfect for the price point, everything you get over delivers. And I wasn't really finding that sort of intensity of flavor, boldness of flavor, and texture from Irish whiskeys I was trying. So I was like, okay, well, maybe there is a hole in the market to make something that kind of fits my bourbon drinker's palate, to make an Irish whiskey that could be interesting for the bourbon drinker. I started researching the category a lot, and uh, what's funny is like, well, if this Irish whiskey wants to grow, it's going to have to start pulling drinkers from other categories. You have to pull in some Scotch drinkers. You have to pull in some bourbon drinkers. Most Irish publicans I talk to, they carry, the spots and redbreast, tealing, and some other cool stuff. And it's like, well, it doesn't say Jameson on the bottle. Most people aren't going to order it. People come in wanting Irish pub experience, which is a pint of Guinness and a shot of JMO, right? So, kind of go back a little bit. Yeah, before that, even I was working for just as the head of sales and kind of the sole salesperson before I was able to hire some people for a couple different wine brands. And one of them grew from a small footprint to nearly doing about 5,000 cases to doing close to 40,000 cases, and being in 6 states to being in like 42 states, no, 38 states. I did it in about 8 months. And so close to me is like, okay, you know what you're doing. You're capable. Would you ever consider doing it for yourself? And I just think that I didn't really have the cojones to do that before I kind of got that vote of confidence. I was like, yeah, actually, I think I can take that leap of faith and take that risk. And I'm not getting any younger, so let's go for it. Kind of came across this Irish tradition that I thought was incredibly beautiful. It's called the Stones of Accord, and basically there are these hold stones that you go to Ireland, you go to Scotland, wherever the Celts live, France, and you're going to find standing stone monuments all over the place. And I love ancient people and studying that sort of thing. These were kind of special to me because they were meeting places. They were places where people came to agree on important things. They were swearing oaths of loyalty, treaties, trade deals, marriages. I was like, that's such a beautiful concept because that's how I always, that's how I enjoy beverages. It's coming together with people. It's enjoying them with my friends. It's using it as an excuse to catch up with somebody. Say, hey, I got this great bottle. I can't find anyone else. Why don't you come by and give it a shot? So that's kind of spirit behind the brand. And I'm also, like, we're Catholics, we're really into traditional values. It's kind of getting back to people honoring their word, following through on their commitments, doing what they say they're going to do. And so that's what we came up for the spirit of the brand. And it was, there's a million stories kind of go into getting this on the shelf, but I was fortunate enough to have the wherewithal to kind of figure out all the compliance and logistics of it. We partnered with a great label agency. They turned us on to this oil painter who painted the label.
Wow.
I found out after he was done, and probably why it cost so much, that he did the original, Captain Morgan, which is kind of really cool. I was like, oh, I wish you would have told me that. So maybe we'll have the next icon on that. But what really solidified it with me was getting into the blending process, going to find this liquid that was going to be what I wanted it to be, and working with the people in Ireland. And it just absolutely blowing away because they just want, they don't care. They don't know. So we want you to succeed because we want Irish whiskey to be spread all over the world. Just last week, 2 weeks ago, I was in Ireland. I was meeting with John Teeling, who is an absolute icon in the industry. In my opinion, the most important person in Irish whiskey in the last 2 centuries. He brought distilling in Ireland back to Irish own. Um, when he started the Cooley distillery in 1987, I don't think there were any distilleries in Ireland that were owned by the Irish. Pernod Ricard, purchased the Milton distillery. So he kind of brought back to Irish own, um, started his brands, eventually sold that. And, it's kind of, he's started getting into that business. He doesn't drink at all. He might, sip, he knows what tastes good. But he kind of got into it and he was doing his thesis, I think, at Harvard or Penn, I forget which, and kind of finding that Ireland at one point was 70% of the world's whiskey supply. And then, after famine and economic struggles and, a lot of oppression, which led to great emigration out of Ireland, Ireland was 90 distilleries, became 4. And they became, not even so much important on the world map. It's like, well, if I can start a company that helps proliferate Irish whiskey, then that'd be a good thing to do to kind of bring back to Ireland what started in Ireland. Scotch Scotland will argue with that probably violently, and I don't want to have that fight, but it's that's as I know it. So we created this whiskey, and the ways that we did it first of all, we're transparent about our blending components. Whiskeys come from 2 distilleries, the Cooley Distillery and the Great Northern Distillery, both in County Louth, both in Dundalk and County Louth in Ireland. That's what I felt the category was missing, was transparency. You see a new blend of Irish whiskey on the shelf and like, wow, that's 80 proof. I don't know what the hell it is. And there's no way of finding any information. We're an open book on that. We don't add any caramel color. A lot of the bigger brands do to give it to make it look a little bit darker, but no, what you see is what you get. We're non-chill filtered. You're gonna get some kind of little charcoaly, hazy bits in the bottom of your bottle here. And we slow proofed our whiskey, which is a page I took from Nancy Fraley's playbook. I think what she's doing is still Austin, and what she's done with, Joseph Magnus and Wyoming whiskey. There's probably no hotter blender to talk about in the market than Nancy Fraley. Both the distillery and my bottler had never heard of slow proofing, so I sent her articles from him, talked about the cognac method of, look, we're just going to drip in water over 30 days, get from 63% to 50%. And my bottler was game for it. They actually got really into it. It was a new challenge for them, and it absolutely knocked it out of the park. Most Irish whiskeys are triple distilled. The base of our blend is double distilled, which gives it a little bit more kind of meat, a little bit rougher edges. I think texturally speaks closer to a American distilled whiskey than it does to kind of broader Irish whiskey. So our blend is it's 85%. It's going to be 12-year-old grain whiskey aged in Old Russell sherry cask. The balance is 7-year-old single malt aged in ex-bourbon casks, bottled at 100 proof. So we are doing something that's a little bit different than what you're going to typically find on the shelf. And on our first batch, which is only 3,400 total bottles, we won double gold, and then best in class for blended Irish whiskey at the New York World Spirits Competition, which I was floored about. I mean, I believed it was good. I thought it was good, but to get that sort of award I really get is definitely a shot in the arm, for sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
I love I appreciate that transparency piece. I really do. I know a couple people that have brands that I wish they would do that. Just because I feel, not because of like anybody's hiding anything, as much as what you just said is sometimes that actually that's a customer won't pull it off the shelf because there's no paper trail.
right. There's no paper trail, and people have begun to expect it, especially when you see across other categories, people pulling fast ones. Tequila is a
Mhm.
really good example where companies are getting fined for having additives and saying they're additive free, things of that nature. So people want, in the age of AI, people want authenticity. They want to know what they're getting. They deserve to know what they're getting. So that's hoping to deliver that.
Perfect. Well, I can already tell, Jason, I want to have you on. We're going to have some roundtable things down the road in the next few months, if not over the course of the year. I'm going to definitely keep you posted on that, and we'll get like a Brandon and your end, and we'll kind of all talk through everything. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time today. But most importantly, as I close these out, I want to remind people there's no script and there's no agenda. Jason and I never met in person. We never shook hands. We never shared a drink together. We literally just met. And I want to remind everybody too that the world is a crazy place, and this is how easy it is to make a friend. There is more in common than people think. And so when you're walking down the street, look people in the eye, hold a door for somebody, ask them how they're doing, and actually take the time to listen when they tell you what it is that's going on in their life.
You can't
And
have a civilization without being civil, you know.
exactly. You're exactly right, man. And for you personally, I want to thank you because I would say that more often than not, the rejection comes because I don't have a script and I don't have an agenda and there are no questions in advance. And most people say, hell no, I'm not coming on. But guess what? That's my filtration system for assholes and people that don't know what they're talking about. And so I appreciate you coming on and I want to give you credit publicly because it is a ballsy thing to get on and not know what it was going to be. And this world is full of gotchas and all those moments. And I appreciate the vulnerability and the openness to coming in and telling your story and trusting me that we're going to tell your story out there. And I can't thank you enough for that, Jason. That means a lot to me.
Yeah, Nate, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun. Tony, so you think about tell I could go for like another hour on it here.
I was gonna keep us going, and then I realized that at 4:30, so I can't.
Well, listen, hopefully the next one can be in person, or
Yes,
grab a cup of coffee and hang out.
absolutely, man, absolutely. And Jason, you have a good rest of your day. Hey, take it easy, man. You take care.
See you.